All right. Well, thank you for being here. Let me just set this up quickly. So if someone is watching and you have not seen our videos before, Jeet, Pete, and Adnan are executives at Holden Advisors. They're experts in pricing and value-based pricing. And we started doing these videos to discuss things that we found to be relevant. So given what issues or questions people were coming to us about, clients, prospects, the whole thing, we thought, why don't we do like a rundown of pricing related stuff in the news and talk about possible implications on a broader scale for B2B. So thanks for being here.
Thank you. I'm excited.
Yeah, let's start. I know I always got to start with like a fun one. So let's start with AMC. We'll start with the news topic itself, and I'll put the links in the notes, but let's start with that one. And then I have different questions on kind of like implications, but they started doing pricing in the last couple of weeks based on your seat location in the movie theater, which is kind of like the airplane model. So general thoughts on this?
What took them so long? Showing up late and you get an aisle seat on one side, an aisle seat on the other in the back, and then you're screwed.
I will say, yeah, I flew Southwest a couple of times, like for business stuff. And it was when you're like leaving a conference or going to a conference, you're then in a mindset of like the hunt to figure out how you're going to get your seat and everything. I'm not in that kind of mindset for the movies, but I can appreciate the assigned seat kind of vibe.
I mean, it seems quite fair. If I'm sitting in, I don't know, the right side of the very front row, it's not a very desirable place to sit. And it seems like, if you're getting the middle seat right in the center of the theater, I'd be willing to pay a little bit more for that. But I think the challenge is, one, the change and getting people to just think in that mindset, but also just some of these details, like, you go to the theater with a family and now your kid's sitting in front and you're sitting in the middle, or vice versa if you're a generous parent. So yeah, I think that some of that governance can be a little bit challenging.
Yeah,
I'm with Pete. What took him so long? I mean, Reed Holden, our founder's last company, Strategic Pricing Group, which I was a part of, their first project was theaters in Boston area. And their value-based approach was to change the metric to do it by seat location and size of theater, right? So I think all of these types of things apply. If you think of movie theaters as entertainment, well, concerts, you pay by seat location.
right.
You have all this other entertainment that you pay by location that the price varies in. It's not a set price. Southwest, I would even argue that you go for A priority, which by the way they sell, versus B priority or C. That's also by seat location because you get to choose which one is valuable to you. It's all part of the same process of looking at the seat that's the most valuable and what you would do to go get it, which in this case, pay more money for. So, I mean, I think it's great. I think we are used to it as a consumer to pay more for what we want. And I think it'll be great for them.
I wonder if part of the backlash, because I was reading different articles about people getting upset about introducing a class system and all that kind of stuff, which is, of course, bound to happen with any kind of news lately. But I was also wondering what kind of industries are next. Like, are there other places where we might see this that we haven't yet?
But isn't that like, we use, Pete does not know this, like we use the dirt example as a case study. And in that case study, for those listening that don't know, essentially an old client of ours, they created a fast pass lane, and you got to pay extra to be in a fast pass lane to get your dirt on your truckloads. So it's faster truckloads, it's cheaper to do from an overall trucking company perspective, and it's great, right? So we have that in other industries in a lot of different places. You pay for fast shipping, as consumers, you want it overnight, you pay for it. So there are things that we want and we pay extra for it in order to get it. And it's awesome as technology sort of gets better, we're going to have more ability to pay for what we want and need at the time we want it and need it. And I think that's awesome.
Yeah. And I would just say, as they go forward and you think about movie ticket prices increasing, I would think that they might want to keep, the lowest tier for like no seat selection, or the worst seats, maybe pretty constant. Like that just remains a little constant, and then the premium prices increase faster.
Yeah.
So kind of get more people into the movies with a cheaper price, and then you can let the people that really want to be there choose their favorite seat for more.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, next up, Roblox. So Roblox is a game. Seems like you make a character and then you go and kind of live life as that character, and there's different ways that you can interact in the game, but they were one of our earlier examples of these microtransactions where you put down your credit card, super, super small purchase points over time. And they just had a strong Q4 earnings report. So this felt like a good one, especially because Adnan's kids play. So he's got kind of a firsthand experience of this whole thing. So do you feel like this is an omen for more microtransactions? Is it more like just good for the gaming industry? Like what's your take on this one?
I mean, I think the gaming industry itself is just very well versed in microtransactions. And what's interesting about Roblox specifically is that it's a two-sided platform, right? So there's a developer that has an incentive to go make a game on their platform, and Roblox pays them. And then they also monetize users of the game via Robux. So these are just things that you can purchase to enhance your character. And the point about microtransactions is, in many cases, the monetary value is really small. So it could be, I don't know, my daughter asked me for a 70-cent transaction recently, but at scale they can monetize it. But I think that what I imagine is the play is, a typical user is not going to only spend 70 cents, because once you spend it once, then that just kind of gets you going. It's that waterfall effect where there's another thing to buy, and another thing to buy, and another thing to buy. And then as the number of games that these developers make increases, there's just more to do on the platform itself. So yeah, bringing this back to the point on microtransactions, I think it's a fascinating concept that we've been seeing more and more in the B2C world as a result of the range of subscriptions that we have, whether it's gaming, entertainment, or other things. The question in my mind is there a use case for these types of things in a B2B environment? I haven't seen it yet, but I certainly think that, and we've seen this in the past, where these B2C trends often set the stage for what could happen in the B2B world.
Adnan, maybe the way what you're describing, it is two-sided, but it's also B2B to C.
Yeah.
And to some degree, the creative transaction model on the B2C end is causing more consistent purchases, which drives more demand for the developers to put their, time and effort into the platform. And I could see it being similar for, a distribution business where, Amazon subscription, buy more and save over time. It's supposed to make a consistent purchase behavior at like a lower, smaller price point. And then that influences the B2B end, because now they want to supply more things to that platform that's innovating in that way.
Yeah, I agree. I think I agree with both. Obviously, the microtransaction and us getting used to microtransactions, I think this is a great use case of it, of how people are just getting used to that type of transaction, which is awesome. What's interesting to me here is, people were looking, I think the article was really looking at their stock price, and a lot of it is the pandemic effect, right? We were home more. Obviously, there was a lot of kids, even adults, gaming more, creating more content, things like that from home, which is really interesting. I think some of that trend is going to continue. So that's interesting. But as I was reading it, I realized that, as I was growing up, the definition of what community is really changing, because they're creating this community that's digital in nature, and the microtransactions and usage-based pricing, all of these things are part of that community and part of who's creating. So that even, there's no longer this sort of this, the way I grew up, artists create, writers create. You don't have that anymore. Now you have everyone creating, and you have sort of this, accumulation of creation, and then you have crowdsourcing of what those creations, if those creations are good, bad, usable, not usable, and you're getting real-time feedback, which is really interesting to me. So it's more of this notion of a larger crowdsourcing, and the old school definition of community and creators and value is changing in real time as you see transactions move to what people are valuing over time, which I think is as technology changes, as storage becomes cheaper, as we become much more adept at coding and things like that as a community. I think that type of environment can be applicable in B2B and other environments as we move forward.
It's a really interesting point, because in some ways, what I'm hearing is that now, as a result of technology, it's easier for these people that are creating things. You can argue that these developers, in some ways, applying this creative element as an artist, but it's easier for them to now monetize what they're doing and deliver value in a way that hasn't been done before because of technology, right? There's no artist selling a very expensive painting, for example. It's a developer making a game on a platform that they just kind of thought of and put into practice, and then getting paid for it with relative ease. That's
right. And the typical barriers of age and degree and those things are all removed, right? Because you're crowdsourcing what's valuable. A 6-year-old can have a huge impact, and they can do incredibly well in an environment like that. So I find it to be fascinating, and I think it is very much transferable to other areas. If you think about community and you think about creators and the value it creates over that crowdsourced platform.
So interesting. Everybody wants that, right? Every company wants to find a way to have people, like the user-generated content as well. Don't get me started on TikTok. This is my latest hobby. So interested in seeing how people make these. I'm way behind on it, but
are you contributing to TikTok?
No. I am a purely observer of the whole thing. Yeah.
If you want to borrow our kids for TikTok content creation, let us know.
I just might. Yeah, that'll be our next channel. All right, let's see. So next one, junk fees. So Biden, I hadn't seen things be classified in this way since Biden had this talk about what the junk fees are. Like, for example, resort fees when you stay in a hotel and then you get the bill and it's right there on the bottom. I think another one is like food delivery where you get a service fee. So he made a statement in the last few weeks. And I think this is an interesting one because I've seen kind of articles on both sides of how to think about it and the best approach. So how do you see this having implications on B2B?
I think my first reaction was that this is in many ways the opposite of what we talked about at the start of our conversation, meaning that with the movie theater example, it's fairly clear what you are paying an incremental fee for, right? It's the placement of the seat. But with this, it seems like the term junk fees is indicative of the fact that you have no idea what these things are for. So it's really, really hard to interpret. It's unfair and therefore not oriented to value. So thematically, without knowing the specific details of everything that's in there, it seems like a misalignment to value. And that's why consumers and the government are pushing back on it.
To me, it seems like somewhat akin to the airline, fees for baggage handling or checking your luggage or what have you. So again, those are a little bit more clear. I've had even on the resort fee side, I've had instances where, if you're actually staying somewhere nice, it's like for the pool or the towels or free drinks or whatever it is. I stayed in a hotel the other weekend where one of the justifications for what was a surprise resort fee was hydration station, which meant there was a water fountain like on every floor. Like, oh, thanks, I got water with this hotel stay. I didn't expect that. So some of them are just, you see it in B2B with different miscellaneous fees in service industries and mechanical services for parts kits and cleaning fees and COVID fee, sort of that sort of replacement consumables kind of motion. I think in this, it's just an attempt to make up the same thing for hotel stays. There's already been a little bit of, the taxes and fees that are put on hotels or local, accommodations tax. They're always like a little bit there. And then I think they see this as, okay, as long as we're going down a model that's not all inclusive because there's additional fees, let's just add on one more because consumers are likely to not include that in their calculus when they select their choice of hotel online.
So I think these types of junk. First of all, I love the terminology junk fees. It's like, oh, are you for it or against it? If you define it as junk fees, I think most people
like a total jerk.
Why would I pay for junk fees? Kind of thing. So that, regardless of the name or the terminology, I think this notion of fees is something very interesting because it happens in B2B, like Pete just said, all the time. Fees are incredibly important or good as a short-term strategy to get a quick bump in profitability. It has always been true. It is true. Anybody can do it. Add the fee, you'll get a quick spike. Great. You can tell the market you got a spike. Yay. Your quarter is good. The problem is over time, those fees have a detrimental impact. So, people, consumers, as well as other businesses, don't like nickel and diming. And you see that, Adnan and Pete have done thousands of customer interviews. I'm sure, we've all heard it over and over again from our clients, customers, that one of the things that they hate is they don't like being nickeled and dimed. Tell me what the price is. Tell it to me ahead of time. Let me evaluate it. Let me make the decision. But do not have hidden fees. Do not have all these different ways of stacking cost from in my environment that I can't predict. And so all of these things, long-term profitability through utilizing fees is probably not the best approach to long-term trajectory of your profitability. It's never been the case, and it really should not be the case if that's your goal, which is long-term profitability. If you want a short-term bump, fees are a great way to do it. The Biden thing to me is interesting because and not to get too political in this conversation, but if you look at fees and you look at the typical consumer that pays these fees, it's disproportionately oriented towards a lower income. People that typically pay these fees or are assigned these fees are from lower income. So I think that the context of the article is really to say, hey, can we protect the middle class to lower middle class? Because if you look at who's paying the fees for bank or overdraft of bank accounts, things like that, it's typically that segment of the population. And I think they're trying to eliminate that from that prospect. B2B obviously is going to be a little bit different. We don't have that element that's in there, but we do have the element of fairness. And the fairness effect we talk about a lot in our pricing, and that to us is important. And fees typically, it's tough to do in that context of fairness.
Yeah. All right. Were you gonna say something, Pete? Okay.
Nope.
Next up. So I've seen a couple different, I'll call it like chirping about deflation. So this started, at least the first I saw it was about the auto industry. So CNBC is the one that I'll reference that labeled deflation in a few different areas. These are I thought I would just read the top 10 deflation categories, and then you can correct where this is off. Smartphones, televisions, used cars, other video equipment, uncooked beef, computers, uncooked beef steaks, different. Okay. Car and truck rental, bacon, and uncooked beef roasts. Just a bit irrelevant. I just enjoyed seeing the list. So like, do they mean just that the prices are going down? Like what's the takeaway from this?
Well, number one, beef, it's what's for dinner. Two,
That was way too easy, Pete. That was way too easy.
I think you look at the macro measurements of inflation and price adjustments in general, you think of the thousands of things that are being aggregated, and it's never the case that all things are moving in synchronicity with each other, either up or down. the rising tide tends to change most ships, but not all. So to me, this is more of a reflection of the spike in prices that we saw in those specific items 6 months ago, used cars, grocery bills, etc. And now they're coming off of those exorbitant highs. And so the deflation is still relative to a really big spike. If you looked at it to pre-pandemic 2019 levels, I'd imagine they're still prevalently up.
Yeah. Other thoughts?
Yeah, go ahead, Adnan, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I think that from a pure terminology perspective, deflation, because of what Pete just said, can provide the wrong sentiment. It seems like exactly what Pete said, where the inflation is coming down in certain sectors. And then if you were to just zoom out and say, look, from a very macro perspective, that's not exactly the trend that you're going to see. So yeah, there are some sectors, some items, electronic goods, for example, where prices are coming down, but is that reflective of that broader macroeconomic environment? Likely not.
Yeah, for us, I think we define deflation in a two axes measurement, and they're looking at it with just one. That's what Pete and Adnan just said, right? It's the drop in price. So they're looking at the change in price over time, and that's not really the only variable we look at. We look at the demand. Has the demand changed? Because in a deflation, Japan knows it really well, where no one's buying. So is there bacon out there everywhere that nobody's buying on the shelves, and they're just accumulating bacon and nobody is buying the bacon, and it's just a stack full of bacon? Last time I went to the grocery store, I don't see that problem. So the demand has not really changed. The prices have come down from peak inflationary times. Yes, it has, but they're still going off the shelf. The demand for bacon is still there, just like the demand for used cars and demand for other things. That demand is still there. The prices, because of supply and demand, is coming down. There was a bacon shortage because of the water shortage and things like that we had that caused it. Now it's not there. Therefore, the supply is there. Therefore, the price is going down, but the demand has not changed. So you can't call it deflation. The definition is wrong in this article, and the way they're writing it, it's just clickbait. That's all it is. Not that I'm angry about it or anything. Exactly.
You're like that Adam Sandler movie. May God have mercy on your soul. They're like, all right, that's that. I think this is a good stopping place, though. I've got other things, and I think we'll just do another episode when we have time, and we'll pause there for now. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right, thanks, guys.